Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 266 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, and in honor of Eczema Awareness Month, I want to start the journey off diving into the eczema-gut connection. This will not be a comprehensive episode, by the way, which is why this will be part one of a series, because the connection here is pretty big. If this happens to be the first episode of the Healthy Skin Show that you've stumbled across and have only thought that eczema was triggered by allergies, environmental issues like your laundry detergent or your genes, this will probably be considerably eye-opening for you. Now, at this point in time, research has been presented at major dermatology conferences demonstrating that skin issues like atopic dermatitis are not just skin issues. And there's ample research already in existence, as well as currently being done, that supports this as well. Some of what I'll share today will connect dots between what experts I've interviewed here on the Healthy Skin Show have already shared that may be obvious to me and other practitioners, but not so clear to others, especially listeners who are patients or caregivers. To better understand this, we have to look at a variety of factors of root causes that contribute to eczema that include inflammation, allergies, dysregulation of filaggrin, which is likely the genetic issue your doctor may have blamed your eczema on, nutrient depletions, liver detoxification challenges, environmental exposures, and even hidden infections that might not be obvious. So let's dive in. I don't think anyone is arguing about the role that inflammation plays in eczema, but most people don't actually know what inflammation is. It's a term commonly thrown around, but my guess is that if I was to ask you to stake your life upon explaining what inflammation is, many readers would find this pretty challenging. And it's not your fault that it's a hard term to define. The health and wellness world hasn't helped much, typically describing it as something silent and vaguely bad or even disastrous. Now, to be clear, certain types of inflammation are good and helpful. The problem that's more concerning is the type of inflammation that is chronic, sustained, and unrelenting, often requiring prolonged anti-inflammatory tools like steroids, immunosuppressants, biologic drugs, and JAK inhibitors for relief. And this is what we commonly see, or perhaps you've experienced, along your skin rash journey. These drugs forced me to dig into inflammation in a way that I was not trained, nor are most of my colleagues in the nutrition field. While I certainly wouldn't consider myself an expert on immunology by any means, I love having people on the Healthy Skin Show like Dr. Heather Zwicky who are. What I have come to learn is that the inflammation that impacts the skin often doesn't originate in the skin, but actually somewhere else in your body. So very much unlike the phrase, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in the gut most definitely does not stay in the gut. And it's not uncommon to see symptoms originating from the gut that eventually show up as skin issues, brain fog, fatigue, joint aches, anxiety, and whatnot. This is partly due to the dysfunction that can be triggered when the microbiome becomes dysbiotic or imbalanced. Other reasons stem from waste products produced by unfriendly or overgrown bugs, overwhelming your liver detox pathways, nutrients lost due to gut dysfunction, and inflammation generated as a result of this unbalanced ecosystem. There's plenty of research at this point to demonstrate how organisms within the GI tract trigger the cytokines, or these inflammatory mediators, which also in some cases happen to be the targets of the drugs I just mentioned. While it's tempting to talk about infections and organisms that eventually make their way into the GI tract to wreak havoc, I think the best place to start this conversation is to consider the impact of an imbalanced gut on your skin. I say this because the bacteria in your gut microbiome are crucial to a healthy life. We cannot thrive without bacteria and even the other organisms that live with them. The balance of the gut microbiome is pretty much set during the first 2 years of life, for better or worse. Imbalances can certainly be passed from mother to baby, but they also can form with exposures to antibiotics, high starch and sugar diets, mold in the home environment, and whatnot. So as you age and are increasingly exposed to various stressors, stomach bugs, medications, processed foods, etc., your gut microbiome will change, and it has changed, and that's where the problems begin. So let's talk about this because imbalances alone can be problematic for eczema. I'm specifically talking about a state of undergrowth or depletion, as well as when there is overgrowth or just way too much bacteria present. And yes, this actually can happen. This episode is brought to you by my line of professional grade supplements called NutriQuel. I crafted these supplements especially for those struggling with chronic skin rash issues and based the formulations on my extensive research and clinical experience in my private practice. They are made from the highest quality ingredients and tested to be free of different allergens so that you can support your gut, liver, and overall health with the formulas that I've found work best for my skin rash warrior clients without triggering a flare. I'm excited to share them with you, so check them out at quellshop.com and use the coupon code GET15OFF to get 15% off your first order. I'll put a link in the description below, and now let's jump back to the video. Despite what you've probably read, you can have an overgrowth of gut bacteria even if you've taken multiple rounds of antibiotics. These cases always surprise me because you would expect the opposite, but it can and it does happen more commonly than you'd think. Overgrowth can show up as small intestine bacterial overgrowth, also called SIBO, as well as large intestine bacterial overgrowth, called LIBO. Both patterns are problematic, even though you might think that more bacteria is better. In my clinical experience, SIBO is typically caused by insufficient stomach acid, which can be caused by a number of issues, which include an H. pylori infection, stress that prevents you from transitioning into what's known as the rest and digest phase, insufficient nutrients such as zinc, sodium, and chloride, autoimmune destruction of the parietal cells that actually make your stomach acid, and this would be caused by anti-parietal cell antibodies. Whereas LIBO is, in my opinion, what follows a possible SIBO situation with bacteria that's been swallowed but not killed in the stomach, traveling further downstream and landing in the colon. I should mention that both of these situations may present with significant imbalances of both the good and the bad gut bugs. Research has shown many times that the gut of those with atopic dermatitis tend to have depletions of really important healthy commensal gut bugs. You're going to hear more about this in a moment. Lower levels of good bacteria are equally common, which is equally problematic. One of the biggest issues I also see with eczema cases is candida overgrowth within the gut. And unlike what everyone thinks, candida is a commensal organism just as much as some of the more well-known bacterial strains. But it must be kept in check by healthy gut flora, which Kelsey Kinney discussed in episode 2 of the Healthy Skin Show. She likened our healthy gut bugs to bouncers in a club that help to control other organisms who are opportunistic, like candida. So with repeated exposures to antibiotics or even excessive and inappropriate use of herbal antimicrobials that clinically depletes healthy gut bugs, along with a processed food diet that's loaded with starches and sugars, candida will certainly take the opportunity to overgrow. I want to be clear here. This issue typically starts in the small intestine since that's where candida normally lives. And if the issue is severe enough, it will begin to move further down into the colon. This fungally environment is also further encouraged if you are living or working in a damp or moldy environment. And even children are not necessarily free from the risk of fungal overgrowth, with some data noting a, quote, higher abundance of particular fungi. They specifically mentioned Candida and Rhodotorula, end quote, in the gut microbiome, which could potentially reinforce the idea that the microbiome imbalances that we're all so worried about are actually starting younger than we even realize. Aside from the candida concern, which I commonly see in eczema clients, by the way, healthy commensal gut bugs help to improve our immune function, produce byproducts of fiber called short-chain fatty acids, and even make some vitamins such as vitamin K, thiamine, folate, biotin, riboflavin, and pantothenic acid. As I've already mentioned, the presence of certain strains is really important, especially when the gut microbiome can be skewed, even in young children and babies with eczema. Current research points toward low diversity and key depletions, as I've already mentioned, but here are some really interesting strains to keep in mind. Bifidobacterium, Bacteroidetes, Akkermansia, and Faecalibacterium strains. This depletion is one facet of the problem, coupled with low production of those short-chain fatty acids. One paper mentioned that early gut, quote, colonization of bifidobacteria subtly regulates the Th1, Th2 immune balance, reducing the risk of atopic dermatitis, end quote. And a paper called Microbiome of the Skin and Gut in Atopic Dermatitis, Understanding the Pathophysiology and Finding Novel Management Strategies, published in 2019 in the Journal of Clinical Medicine, stated that, quote, the leaky gut in atopic dermatitis patients propels skin inflammation by enabling the penetration of toxins, poorly digested food, and microbes into the systemic circulation. As they reach the skin, a strong Th2 response is initiated, causing significant tissue damage, end quote. So with that so succinctly stated, we have more to dive into, but that will be for a part 2 and potentially even a part 3 of this discussion on the eczema-gut connection. For now, it's crucial to understand that the gut of someone with eczema may look very different compared to someone who does not have eczema. Those differences may be very important. So while research is still digging into this connection, to completely dismiss the eczema-gut connection at this point, and in my opinion, is very short-sighted. Now, if you've got any questions or thoughts to share about this topic, or you'd love me to dig into a specific area, head on over to skinterrupt.com/266 so we can keep the conversation going. And please, if you know someone who's struggling with eczema or somebody who doesn't realize that there's actually a connection between what's going on their skin and something deeper and more internal, share this episode with them, especially if they're frustrated that what they're doing topically just is not yielding lasting results. And before you head off for your day, take a moment to rate and review the Healthy Skin Show. Then hit the subscribe button. That way you can tune in each week for new research, tips, and inspiration to help you rebuild healthy skin. And I promise you, I'm going to be diving into probiotics and pathogens coming up soon in this series. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to digging deeper with you in the next episode.